The day after the disappointing loss to the Cincinnati Bengals in the AFC Championship game, I know everyone's feeling a little down, probably a little more than a little down, but this is Monday. It's the Q&A. We all now get to kind of focus ahead on what the Chiefs are going to be doing throughout the offseason, what they're going to do into next year, how they can continue to have one of the best teams in the NFL, how they can continue to add players to a roster that needs kind of a little bit of overhaul. I'm going to answer all your questions today. Ryan is at the Senior Bowl, currently on a plane there, hoping he gets there safely and gets us some intel on some players that we're going to be looking at this coming April in the draft. So don't forget, this is RGR Football. Welcome back, everybody. Like I said, I know that this is difficult to process. It's hard to see that game yesterday turn out the way that it did with the lead the Chiefs have had. But I still think there's there's enough out there to look forward to. This is going to be something that happens along the way. Mahomes is 26 years old. There was always going to be a weird loss that just kind of didn't feel right. And I think that he had his own misgivings in the second half of that game. And, it's not my place to tell everybody how to feel. You can have your own opinions, you can do everything that you want. But today we are going to answer questions. This is all about. I know you guys have a lot that you want to ask, a lot that we want to get to. But with Ryan here today, we're going to go the 1 hour, probably just a little past 7. I will get to as many questions as I can. Obviously, all super chats will be answered, pointed to, pulled up on the screen. We'll do the whole 9 yards. My name is Daniel Harms, for those of you that are new, film analyst here. And if you are new, you're looking to ask a question, make sure you put the question marks before the question so that I can pick them out of the chat easier. It makes it much less difficult for me to find questions among the chaos that happens in the chat sometimes. So let's go ahead without any further ado and get started with our first question of the day from Evan. Thank you very much. Is it time to move on from EB and Spags? So, personally, my own opinion, okay, this has nothing to do with what I think the coaching staff is going to do or what Andy Reid personally wants to do. I believe, and it's not much of an indictment on either. I think Spags has a lot of complex, interesting things that he does with the defense. For me, his style and the system that he uses is a little bit outdated in regards to how he feels about linebackers, defensive ends, and corners. A little bit more to be specific. I want personally my own defensive coordinator to be able to play more cover 3 at times, to be able to play more in some of these less stylistically less aggressive defenses that can still create pressure on the quarterback. But when you have defensive ends that don't consistently create pressure, like Frank Clark, who's a big guy, who's not going to be able to always do that. You saw Melvin Ingram come in and be just a pressure force. He created a ton of pressures because he has speed and quickness, all this kind of stuff. So EB, I think he may be a little bit. I have no issues, my personal with EB, but I'm just sensing a little bit of stagnation on the coaching front. I think that it would be nice to see a bit of a redo. Not to say that that's going to happen. I personally don't think it will. But myself, I think every once in a while it's time for a good round changeover. So I would be open to do that. Thank you for the question, Evan. Thank you, Oregon. Hey, Ryan. I apologize. Ryan's not here, so it's just me answering your question. I hope that's okay with you. As a fine-aged wine myself, even I can adjust my decisions in life. So why can't Andy Reid realize through his playoff failures that he needs to run the ball? That's a question that probably Ryan wouldn't even be able to answer to you because it doesn't make much sense when you're getting everything that the Chiefs were able to get consistently on the ground with both Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jerick McKinnon. It just didn't make sense. They just felt like they were banging their head against the wall, much like they did earlier in the season. So it just continued to be this stretch of play that we've seen where the Chiefs don't want to adjust to what's happening in game. And maybe they saw something on the sideline all 22 where they're like, look, we can go here, we can try and do this. And so we're going to keep trying to, throw the ball. You have to be able to admit your mistakes and your wrongdoings in game. They were unable to do that. And then even in overtime, they doubled down. They didn't run the ball once in that 3 down possession that they had. They passed it all 3 times. Mistake after mistake after mistake. Bad, bad, bad. So I'm not really sure why he can't figure it out. But with this retooled offensive line, which I think is going to be here for the next couple of years, they got to figure it out and they got to figure it out soon. Appreciate it, Oregon. Appreciate the super chat, US Ability Gene. Thank you very much. Always appreciate you guys' support. I do appreciate everyone in here tonight, even on a Monday like this where no one wants to really be here asking questions, trying to figure stuff out for the long haul. But this is what we do. We're going to always focus on the Kansas City Chiefs. Win or lose, always going to be the thing, and we're going to be here every time. Thank you for the question, Bradley. Assume Matthew was gone. How would you approach this offseason? Dan is the man. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, safety moves up into like one of the premium spots in your really to-do list. I think you need to bring in a free agent, at least one. I believe Sorensen will be gone too. So you have 2 safeties who played the majority of your safety snaps this year gone. That's a problem going forward. And you also have Armani Watts, who's a free agent. I would imagine he'll be back, but we don't know. You have Juan Thornhill as the other safety in the group. You need to bring in a free agent. You need to draft a guy with a top 100 pick, in my personal opinion, if Matthew's gone, especially if Spags is the defensive coordinator going forward. The safety play, it brings everything top down. Matthew and Thornhill communicated everything. You guys saw all the communication issues they had without Tyrann Mathieu on the field against the Bills. With him on the field against the Bengals, they did a really good job of limiting big plays. Like they had some, and I think that there were some interesting calls on defense, but they did their job, in my opinion. And I think Matthew was a huge reason for that. So that's what I would do. It shoots safety up to the more of the top of the big picture, in my opinion. Appreciate you, Bradley. Thank you, Mr. Big Phil. Why didn't they run the ball? Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a huge talking point. So if you're all in here right now, I'm going to say this one more time. I don't know. Andy Reid has this thing about him in the playoffs where he doesn't. It's kind of funny. We've seen leads falter before where they refuse to throw the ball. My own theory is that Andy Reid understood the quarterbacks that he's had his entire career and said, I'm going to run the ball when I have a lead in the second half. In comes Patrick Mahomes. I have the quarterback now. I can do whatever I want to. I can figure all this stuff out. He can usually figure it out. I'm not going to run the ball when I probably should against a defense that legitimately had no way to stop them. So I don't know. It's frustrating, but hopefully we're going to get through it. Okay, so can everybody hear me? Everybody hear me? I just saw someone said that there was no sound, so I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me. Everybody, can someone comment, please, so that I'm gonna have to scroll back up here. So you guys can hear me? Okay, good. Whew. That was a little confusing. I saw someone say there's no sound. All right, I'm gonna scroll back up here. All right, we're good. Whew. Aaron, you're scaring me. Appreciate you being in here, Aaron, our fearless moderator, always in here on these Q&As. Thank you, Jared. I'm fine with Spags staying as long as Sorensen and Neiman are gone. If they don't let them go, he needs to go with him. I don't disagree with that. I think that you have to loosen some of these emotional ties that you have to some of these players. And I think that Sorensen and Neiman are the two guys really kind of hold this whole defense down and prevent you from playing guys that you should be playing. So, yeah, I agree with you. Thank you, Peyton. Is it concerning that even though Tyrann isn't giving up a lot of plays, he doesn't seem to be making any splash plays anymore? Does that make him expendable? I think you saw the exact difference that he makes on the field between the Bills game and the Bengals game. Miscommunication. Even if he's not, he's not getting all the plays and getting interceptions, he's lining players up to be in the better spots and in the spots they need to be. Plays like that come, and turnovers they're not a very sticky statistic over season. I think that his first 2 seasons with the Chiefs, he was in much better position, and defense and offenses kind of understood that. So they stopped throwing in the ball near him and more underneath to where he's supposed to be to prevent him from getting turnovers. So I don't think it makes him expendable. If anything, I think it shows that he should probably be on this team, but it's going to be difficult with the money, how much he wants, and how much the Chiefs are willing to pay. So we'll definitely see going forward. Thank you, Chief Comments. Kansas City in 2021, fifth in pressure percentage and 30th in sack rate. Yeah, we saw it on display yesterday. How do you fix this going forward? Is there a coaching scheme change or simply effort? Honestly, yeah, they play some decent quarterbacks and escaping some of these. You guys saw yesterday, Joe Burrow. He's not the biggest, not the best athlete in the world, but he manages the pocket really well. Manages the pocket really well, and he's able to find ways to get out. A lot of quarterbacks do that, but also teams are getting rid of the ball against this team pretty quickly because of the secondary, and especially early in the season, they weren't getting a lot of pressure. They weren't getting a lot of sacks because the ball's coming out in places you know where to go. And that's another thing that I want to see Spags change is that they utilize all this press coverage, but they don't ever let them be physical. And if you throw off the timing of the quarterback and the receiver, you're going to find some more of those pressures become actual sacks. So it's a little bit of both in terms of they can't always get to the quarterback and get those quarterback hits and get those sacks, even if the pressure's there. And pressure rate is kind of it's a kind of an iffy thing because it can be how close you are, even with a blocker in front of you. You can still call that a pressure by happenstance, but it's all relative. But they did create quite a bit of pressure, but unfortunately, they're unable to just get some of these sacks. And hopefully, this is something that doesn't change or doesn't carry over going forward. All right, appreciate you all your questions. Thank you, Ready Whip. McCole and Tyreek arguing on the sideline. Any thoughts on that? I thought McCole should have got more targets. He clearly thought he should have gotten more targets too. And I don't disagree with him. I think that especially the way that he played early on in the postseason, all the way through the postseason, he deserved a bit more targets. But as the game got close, and specifically in the second half, when things started to look a little bit grim, it looked like it looked like Mahomes went into more of his comfort zone where he's targeting players that he has more trust in personally, which can be a bit of an issue at times when you're not throwing the ball to McCole Hardman or really not getting him involved in some of these quick screens where they can generate 5, 6, 7 yards at a time. So that's a little bit frustrating. I don't have any issues with the arguing. This kind of happens, especially in games where you're not doing what you should be doing, what you think you should be doing. So tensions are high. It's the AFC Championship game. I got no issues with that. Thank you for the question already. Thank you, Steven. Encouraged or discouraged by Patrick saying if he had to do it all over again, he would still throw the ball to Eric that got intercepted. I think that he understands, much like Ryan was talking about last night. He overcooked that ball. I think that he had exactly what he was looking for, and he threw it too deep. And if Tyreek he throws that ball more to the sideline, Tyreek can undercut the route and actually go get the ball off to the side. And that's what Mahomes saw, but he got too much air under it, and it went too deep down the field, which was the problem. So I think that I don't have any issue with him saying that. I just want to see them not have to be in 3rd and 10 when you didn't run the ball at all in overtime and you put yourself in that position by throwing it to Marcus Robinson 2 times in a row. Appreciate you, Stephen. Thank you, Alan. What role does Clark Cook have in making changes? I honestly don't know. I don't think he has much of any power in that organization in terms of making changes. I think he can suggest things, and Andy Reid says, "No, I'm going to go ahead and do this." That's my own personal opinion. Thank you, Sean. Would you bring Jaron Reed back? He just wasn't really impressed by him. I think down towards the end of the season, he started to be much better. But at a certain point, I don't know necessarily, unless he's going to take a little bit of a pay cut, honestly, because he wasn't even that expensive last year. I think it was an $8 million contract. But you're looking to extend and get your defensive line younger and better and more athletic. I think Jaron Reed provides some of that. I think that you saw him much more at the end of the season be better pass rusher. In this game, actually, I can pull up his pressure numbers right here really quick. Yeah, so Jaron Reed had, where are they? Oh, that's not the right thing. That's coverage. I don't want that. I'm pretty sure that Reed had 4 pressures in this game. Yeah, he did. He had 4 pressures in this game. And really, when you're pairing him with Chris Jones up the middle on pass rush situations, I like that pairing. So I would look to bring him back. But again, I'm not entirely sure if they're going to want to do that. All right. Thank you again, Oregon. Who are your bucket list free agents? you like to get to? Honestly, I haven't looked at the free agent list. Odell Beckham Jr. is probably on the top. I know that people want to say he's a locker room cancer. I think that he's just a cancer in Cleveland. He looks to me to be a little bit more mature than we saw in New York. He's clearly still got the potential to play, and I think in this environment it would help him a lot. But that's pretty much all I have right now in terms of what I've seen at the free agent list. Thank you again, Jaden, for the question. When is enough going to be enough? And Andy Reid is going to start running the ball. Yeah, I appreciate the question. I tried to address it off top a little bit. I don't know if you were there. I wish that Andy would do it too. We all kind of do, but again, it's something that he's got to figure out on his own. He needs to take it to heart, and he needs somebody to question him in the coaching staff. EB's not going to do that, even though he's probably the only guy that could. He's not going to do that. No one's going to do that. So it's got to be up to Andy to look himself in the mirror and say, look, I need to be better. As much as I say it in the press conferences, I need to do it when it matters. And that's kind of the biggest problem. Appreciate you. All right. Thank you, Big Chief. How can we trust Reed in the future? He says he's going to make adjustments. What we know is history. He never makes adjustments, just like he didn't do in this game. So how can we trust moving forward? That's a loaded question because Andy Reid has now gotten to four straight championship games with two different organizations, and he's won the big one. I know he went back to back Super Bowls. So as much as it's hard to trust the decision making, I think that the offensive line is very clearly a strength of this team. It's going to very clearly be a strength of this team going forward. You can't trust that he's going to continue to make that decision and that he's going to find a way to make those decisions. But in situations like that, I think that he'll learn. We've now seen Patrick Mahomes adapt to the coverages, okay? Dropping 8 men into coverage and saying run the ball, you're asking a lot out of your quarterback to be able to find guys open, even with a 3-man rush, because there's just so many guys in passing lanes. So the adjustment process now comes, in my opinion, pretty easily. If you start to see a team rush 3 guys, they're going to start running the ball more. They're going to run a little bit more uh, some draw plays and things like that. I think you'll see that start to creep in. If it doesn't, that's when you really start to question Andy Reid even more than we already have. All right, guys. Appreciate y'all being in here tonight. Again, so much fun. I know that it's not the best circumstances, but we'll make do with what we have. Thank you, Pono. Hey, Daniel, would you like to see Andy Reid retire? Retire, considering he was obviously goof ups that cost us the game. No, I think that Andy Reid still is more than capable of being the head coach of this team, and the marriage between him and Patrick Mahomes is exactly what you're looking for. Just Mahomes and Andy need to get on the same page a little bit. They need to. I think Mahomes needs to talk up a little bit more to him and tell him what he needs to do as much as Andy Reid needs to tell him what to do. I appreciate you, Josh. You guys are in here. Make sure you check out Josh's page on YouTube. Now that the season is over, I can say everything I was thinking. The Chiefs team felt off all year, and the same issues never truly went away. I think that that's a pretty uh, for me, it's a cop out answer because this team should be in the Super Bowl. So we can all say as much as we want to about the misgivings earlier in the season, but at the end of the day, you watch that game. Cincinnati shouldn't have been in it, and they just fell over themselves. And I think that I know that they had the same issues creep up, but I don't think personally that that's saying that they shouldn't have been there and things like that, or that all of this season didn't matter so much. I think that it was important for them to get over what happened early in the season, and this was a different adjustment than they've seen. They don't see teams drop into 8-man coverages a whole lot, even with as good as they are. The Bills didn't do it at all, and the Bengals learned from that and decided to do it. So, and they just, for me, it caught them off guard a little bit, and they just didn't adjust. That's for me, that's this one game, and it was more of an isolated scenario than it was with everything else. They didn't see it coming, and when you don't see something coming, it's bad planning. And yeah, I just I'm more of the opinion that this team should be in the Super Bowl, even with all those mistakes. So it is what it is. Appreciate the question. I believe see clutch probably. Should the Chiefs try and target Justin Reed? That wouldn't be a bad. Uh, I don't even honestly. I don't know if Justin Reed has been playing much at all. So I don't know. I know that he was a more of a locker room problem earlier in his career, but I don't know. Thank you for the question, Brian. Dan, did you see Tyron's tweet today? Do you think he's gone? Yeah, I saw the tweet. I think he's just preparing for the scenario where he is. But as much as we've seen Tyron tweet, we know that you never really take Twitter to heart in terms of. I think he was just having a heartfelt message to BJ Kissel right there. That's all I can see on that. Thank you, Andy. Two things we don't need to see: 4-1-6 defense and Dan Sorensen. You're not wrong about that. Not wrong about that at all. All right, appreciate you, Mez. What scares me about this game is Andy Reid and Mahomes never learned anything from the first game against Cincy. I disagree. Um, this it was a different strategy from Cincinnati, and they didn't, like I said, they didn't see it coming, which is also part of the problem. You didn't actually get to see them adjusting to an 8-man coverage, and I still think the defense was worlds better than it was in the first game by quite a bit. I have no issues with what they did, so I don't know. I guess I can understand that them coming back in the same type of way is not what. Obviously, you don't want to lose this kind of game 2 times in a row, but it was completely different understands. I think that in the first game they just let the foot off the gas, got complacent, and then the defense just allowed Burrow to do whatever he wanted to. And in this game, I think that they just got confused and they didn't understand how to adjust. When you're able to run the ball the way they were against the Bengals in this game, and then you don't go back to it, it's all mental. It's just right there. And I don't think that they just like gave up. I just think that they just didn't know what to do, which is a little very confusing thing to see for a team that's been at this point in this stage. So that's the most frustrating part about it for me. Thank you, Canadian. Will EB be passed over once again? I sort of want that extra third pick. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be getting a head coaching job in the NFL anytime soon. That's partially his fault, partially Andy Reid's fault, and I think he'll be more in the college head coaching gig, not too far removed from here. All right. Thank you guys so much for all of the questions. Thank you, Theo. Hi from London. That's awesome. Thank you for joining us from London. Do you think we keep Spags with Zimmer, Fangio, and Flores out there? And do you think edge and wide receiver should be top priority? So I do think the Spags is going to stay the defense coordinator of this team. Even though I personally would move off and try to get one of those guys as a defensive coordinator, I just think that they're better defensive coordinators. And I disagree with some of Spags' schemes schematically and things like that. But that's my own opinion. And I think that Andy Reid's a much more loyal person than that. And that's partially why I think that with this coaching staff staying the way that it is, you might see more of this flux in terms of the team finding ground and having issues and things like that. So I don't think that wide receiver is a top priority. I think that you saw Mahomes' ability to adjust prove all of that kind of wrong. I think that they were just fine at wide receiver. They're going to probably add a free agent, look to draft somebody, but as a top priority, no. Edge, definitely not even close. It's edge, corner, and probably safety, especially if you consider Matthew not being here. I'm always going to wear the hats, guys. Jeremy, I'm always going to wear a hat. I'll try to, regardless of the season being over, I'll switch out some hats and things like that. But I do still think I'm going to, I'm going to rock my Chief stuff while I'm doing this, definitely because it makes more sense to me. Thank you, William, for the super chat. As always, do the Chiefs really need a third receiver if they bring back Pringle? Well, we need speed on defense, especially in the secondary and off the edge. How would you approach a defensive overhaul this offseason? Yeah, I think I just touched on that a little bit. I do believe more talent at wide receiver is definitely not a bad thing. with this offense with Patrick Mahomes. I don't think it's a huge need. I think that you bring Pringle back, you allow a younger player in Powell to come along. If you bring Gordon back, I'm not sure if that's what they're going to do or not. I personally wouldn't myself, but that's me. I don't know what Andy Reid thinks about doing that. But I do think just adding more talent to the wide receiver pool, some more competition, get Demarcus Robinson out of here, bring back Pringle. You already have McColl there. So you already have guys that know the playbook and won't need that tune-up time that another drafted receiver, a free agent, or now Powell will need. So I think that there's definitely some some wiggle room with wide receiver. And that approach a defensive overhaul this offseason, definitely start with more athletes everywhere. They need better athletes everywhere. And it's just there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, in my opinion. Thank you again, William. I do think Spagnuolo should be fired, and do you think he will? Because there's a huge difference. I think he should, but won't. Yeah, we just kind of touched on that too. Appreciate you, Jaden. But yeah, I do think that he should be, but won't be. Thank you for the super chat, Brandon. What 40 times are acceptable for a free or strong safety? So as much as your 40 times are, going to be talked a lot about, game speed and mental processing are far more important for these positions because you can always play a half step ahead if you know what's coming. If you're a quick study, you can see what's coming on the offense. It's going to make you play faster and be more loose. Just having a guy who's straight line speed is great. You need to see how they react in situations, their reactive acceleration, and you're able to click and close. All of that is much more important than their 40 times, in my opinion. Again, thank you for the super chat, though. Thank you, Stevie. Hi, how is everybody doing? I know it's a difficult day, but I think that let it process a little bit, and I know that I'm doing okay. I'm having a decent day. My daughter helps keep me preoccupied and in a better mood than I normally would be. But again, thank you, Stevie. I appreciate you. Your thoughts on Mahomes not hitting Hardman or throwing to Kelsey late in the fourth? I think he just missed them. I think he expected defenders to be somewhere they weren't, and he wasn't processing things like we've seen. He had a bit of a hiccup. I don't think there's any two ways about that. He definitely had some issues reading the defense and seeing what was in front of him because I think he had 2 touchdowns. I think he had three different touchdowns. One to Pringle, one to Kelsey, and one to Hardman that he missed. So yeah, very, very interesting. Again, thank you very much, Stevie. We have to Andy proof the defense, new coaching, and new players, so we don't have to worry about the not making adjustments, not scoring for 30 minutes. I don't disagree with that. That's why a part of me thinks that Spags should be gone because of that. It's not the same defense. You have two aggressive style now. Now you have two aggressive style offenses that want to throw the ball, and now the defense that wants to blitz when they shouldn't be blitzing, and it doesn't have the athletes everywhere to really execute what you need to be able to have. And if you have a lead in the second half, a defense should be able to come up and make key stops for you and get those sacks on third down that you really need. So I definitely don't disagree with the notion that in some aspects, Andy proofing a team might come in handy. It's a little bit weird that we're calling it Andy proof, but sometimes in big games they seem to have these issues. So yeah, I don't disagree. Excuse me. Sorry, my nose is a little bit stuffed up tonight. Thank you again, US Ability. We have played a lot of postseason games. With the season expansion, do you believe the NFL is now one-hit wonder teams like Tampa and the Rams? It could be. It's going to be clearly much harder to form any. I think if we try to look at what the Patriots did and compare teams to that, it's an unrealistic feat. You're always trying to get there. I don't think any team is ever going to do that again. If they do, that's good for them. But what we've seen is pretty unique in the Patriots sense. So you're going to probably see some of these teams go all in on a season and start doing more of what the Rams did with their picks, with the opportunities to get that Super Bowl. With how many games you have to play, like the Chiefs, like you said, the Chiefs have played a ton of games over the last 4 years. It's just a ton of football, ton of almost, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Like it's 11 extra games they've played over the past 4 years. That's a lot of football. And that doesn't come back. So yeah, I think that it's going to be more difficult for the Chiefs to continuously get back there. If they get back to the AFC Championship game next year, I mean, that's just going to be a whole other type of mental fortitude and toughness. So it'll be hats off to them. But I hope it doesn't become too much harder. Thank you again. Ready? Do you think Mike Dana will get more playing time next year? Sucks he moved down the depth chart. I think Dana's a rotational player, so I don't think he should ever be a starter, especially because I think he's hit his ceiling already. A good run defender that can have some pass rush juice, but that's pretty much it. What you're getting out of him is what you're seeing right now. So probably not. They are going to have to bring somebody in that can be a starter at defensive end. I also don't think Chris Jones is worth 22 million, 0 sacks, 11 playoff games. Sacks aren't indicative of performance all the time, specifically because in that game alone, he had 6 pressures. He creates a ton of pressures, and if anything, it speaks more to how poorly the defensive end position has been outside of Chris Jones and now Melvin Ingram. They have been able to create a ton of ability to create sacks out of the pressure that Jones consistently creates. So I will disagree with you there. But again, thank you for the question. Again, thank you, Mr. Big Phil. Mike Hughes, Sorensen, and Neiman need to be gone. Yeah, definitely agree with that. What do you think? And they need more speed on the secondary. Yeah, I think that those guys should be gone. You need to rotate some more better athletes, better athletes, better athletes. I don't necessarily think you need more speed in the secondary. I just think you need to have guys that can get your hips right and be quicker hips and have a better transition across your face because Travarius Ward is the guy who can get beaten across his face every time, just about every single time. If you want to run a slant in front of him, if you want to run a double move, you're going to pretty much get him. But the ball usually came out more quickly than teams were able to really take advantage of that. So I'm more of the opinion that they just need better athletes. Thank you, Mr. Big Phil. Carlos, thank you. Read something today that Cowboys might let go of Amari Cooper. Do you think the Chiefs should go after Cooper or Juju more? Juju's the younger player, and the way that he's played slot receiver would offer the Chiefs something that they haven't had in quite a while if Juju wants to stop doing all of his TikTok nonsense and keep everything football. I would much rather go after Juju than Amari Cooper. Appreciate you, Flapjack. Can we be done with the RPO in 2020? I think you saw the RPO kind of go down during the end of the season there because they were able to create better rush looks and they were able to use more just regular passing situations and more play action than having to do the RPO. And teams were getting in the RPO lanes and throwing hands up and getting tip passes. So I think you saw that naturally go away. And when teams start to kind of fall asleep, you'll see it come back. It's always going to be in there a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be as prevalent as it was the last couple of years. Appreciate your question, Flat. Thank you, Brandon. Who would be the best signing in free agency? Yeah, I do apologize, you guys. I haven't looked at the free agents yet. We'll get more into that as the offseason goes around. But again, I'll do what I can to get more of the free agents in the next couple of weeks to see what it's looking like as it shapes up as the offseason comes around. Thank you, Peyton. Is Derek Stingley completely out of our draft range? How far would we have to come up to get him? I think that Stingley is probably going top 15. So as the Chiefs have the 29th pick, I don't think that he's reasonably in there. If he starts to go past 15, gets closer to 18, 19, they might be able to move up. But I don't think that they're going to be moving up in this draft in the first round. I think that they would much rather be more aggressive in the second and third rounds than they would be in the first. Appreciate you, Oregon, again. Dan, I hate to bag on McCole, but he did give up on that bomb. But yeah, I saw that too. I think he may have lost it, not given up on it. It looked to me like he lost the ball a little bit because it landed like up to his right a little bit. From my own, when I watched it on the broadcast, we'll know a little bit more where it fell in where in comparison to where McCole Hardman was in the field, but again, that looked to me more like he just lost the ball, which happens from time to time. But he's not the best at tracking it downfield. He's still a decent tracker. It's just sometimes you lose it. Appreciate everyone's questions again. Thank you very much, Oregon. Thank you, Stevie. Once again, always coming in with the super chats. Spags puts his strong safety in conflict situations too much. I think just he puts his corners in worse positions than anybody else. He wants the safeties to be able to help underneath, and honestly, putting guys who aren't great athletes on islands against receivers is way more of a problem, in my opinion, than safeties in conflict situations. You have to have a strong mind and strong safety to play in Spag's system, and that's why Matthews worked so far. Thank you again, Chief Big Sean. Now, do you believe me that Ingram is the best player on the defense? No, he's not the best player on the defense. I think he's the best defensive end by a wide margin. But no, I don't believe that that's the case. I still think Chris Jones is a better player than he is. I think that Matthew is a better player than I think Snead's a better player than he is in totality. But I think he's had an incredible effect on the defense that should never be overlooked, especially after what he did this postseason to what this defense couldn't do. Thank you, Duba Duba. WW. I did that last time too. I'm sorry. I felt the defense did okay, but we're gassed. The offense failed and put extra pressure. What's your thoughts on it? You know, I do believe that the defense did a good job. I think that they executed their game plan pretty well. You had a few gaffes with the screen and then a couple situations where you had man on man on the outside with no help. But overall, I think they did their job and allowed the offense the opportunities to win this game outright. And secondly, do you think Patrick Mahomes talent? Sorry, W. I can't understand the last part of your question. If you can get back to me in there, I might be able to answer it before the end of the Q&A. Thank you, Alan. Is Brown worth an extension? Bengals just ran around him in circles. He's not. I think we've seen exactly what Ryan and I have talked about up until this point. He's limited athletically, and speed rushers off the edge give him trouble. And Hendrickson was able to do that a couple different times. He got 7 pressures according to PFF, but I'm not entirely sold on him getting 7 pressures. But you're gonna have to probably extend Brown because now you have continuity on the offensive line. Depending on how much he's going to make, I'm not sure yet. We're going to see that contract if it comes down the pipe. But Mahomes understands his strengths and his weaknesses, and I think that ideally you want to have the same offensive line going forward. Maybe you just franchise tag him this year and see what happens, and maybe draft a. See, I don't like the idea of drafting like a third day tackle to have to replace him if you have to, but I think the franchise tag is more likely coming than it is anything else. I'm falling behind here, guys. I apologize. I'm starting to think that if each attacks wide receiver in free agency and we do go defense early in the draft, I like one of the top 5 corners in the draft, preferably Sauce. Yeah, I like Sauce Gardner a lot. I think that he'd be a good fit to stylistically what they want to do, a little bit better athlete, but also a physical guy that you can probably get away with in some one-on-one situations. And I don't disagree with the Veach going at wide receiver. I think we've seen the last season, and then a little bit more rumors already talking about how wide receiver is somewhere they're going to target. So yeah, I think that you're probably going to see at least one wide receiver back on new to the team, and they should be looking at defense pretty heavily, and then figuring out what they want to do with if Matthew's going to be here or gone. I think that's a big key to what they do defensively in the draft and in the offseason. Thank you for the question. Thank you, Jaden. Do you think Chris Godwin is a remote possibility in joining the Chiefs or go even crazy about Devontae Adams? No, I don't think Devontae Adams is anywhere near it. I think that he's looking for nearly $30 million a year, and that's a big no, especially for this team. And Godwin, coming off of an injury, is still going to be a sought-after player. He might be someone to get a 1-year contract, but I don't think that it's going to be in Kansas City. I don't think the big-name wide receivers are going to come here to play with outside of maybe OBJ on a 1-year deal to get a next contract somewhere. Granted, OBJ might be looking at a multi-year contract somewhere else because I think he proved he can be at least a relatively safe number 2, number 1 option again in the future. You're coming here, you're playing third fiddle to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, and we'll kind of see how that goes. And I think that some of the lesser wide receiver free agents like Juju Smith-Schuster, who's coming off in the injury and things like that, probably what you're looking at. I think Godwin's a number 1, a bona fide number 1. And I'm not sure he wants to play in an offense that would be more third option for him. Yes, thank you, Aaron. Make sure you guys go check out the Locked On Chiefs Network and the Locked On Draft, NFL Draft, all on YouTube. They have the podcast as well. Ryan is at the Senior Bowl right now, doing everything for Locked On NFL Draft as well as us, and as well as Locked On Chiefs. So it's awesome. Make sure you guys share, get the reviews out there. It definitely helps us out a lot and them out a lot as well. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate your support as always. All should have gotten more targets in second half if we used the run to set up the pass. T5 needs to be back. Yeah, I agree with this. I think they should have used more actual play action. I don't remember seeing a whole lot of true play action when the run was working. That doesn't make much sense to me either. So if you at least wanted to go away from we're away from running the ball, give them real play action. Go under center, bring in Mike Burton, maybe two tight ends, play action them. Just do it that way. I just don't understand it. Um, T5 needs back. Could see a huge yeah, Tyrann Matthews got an incredible heart. The dude's just always kind of emotions on his sleeve kind of guy. And I think that that kind of shows on Twitter a lot. So you see some of his responses be a little bit more emotional. I always wouldn't read into them all the time, but I do think that he should be back. Yeah. Again, thank you, WW. Does Patrick Mahomes' talent hurt sometimes? Because it seems like at all times, it seems like, yeah, he feels like, as well as other players, just figure out he will bail us out. I think that that's kind of the dynamic you create with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes at times. And that's part of the problem with having an all world talent. He's that good of a quarterback. They did a great job of adjusting early in the season and getting to those patience and getting his footwork and staying in the pocket right. And sometimes you can lean too much into that. But you have to be able to run the ball in situations where you need to run the ball if a team's just going to drop eight. So it's an adjustment process for him, and they have to be quicker to realize that in game. All of these make the difference between, winning a game and losing a game, especially in the AFC Championship game. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate all the questions. I'm going to try to go a little bit faster here so we can get through as many as possible. Thank you, Quinn, for the question. Dan, I was at the game, and in overtime on Mixon's last run, they kept re-showing the play, and I didn't realize that Mixon wasn't down by contact and dropped the ball, and the Chiefs picked it up. I didn't see it myself. I'm sure that there's been a little bit of talk about a fumble, but I mean, at this point, what do you do? There's not much you can have done. My my thing will be is they should have won this game in regulation. Period. So that fumble shouldn't even have mattered. It shouldn't have come down to it. And if it was, I'll probably find out when I rewatch it, and I'll let you guys know if it was not. But again, at the end of the day, the Chiefs are at home, and the Bengals are in the Super Bowl. It's kind of unfortunate to see that that kind of stuff happens. But again, win that in regulation when you should have. Excuse me. Thank you again, Alan. Is loyalty holding the Chiefs back, and he can't be the controller of everything? It does to some degree. I definitely agree that they have some issues with players that they're too loyal to. Sorensen, Neiman, to an extent, some of those guys as well. And to Spags and Eric Bieniemy in some way, shape, and form. I think that it holds them back from being the best possible team they could be, and that's unfortunately how some of this goes. They're going to have to figure out how to best get this team with better athletes and better players to execute, especially if they're going to keep Spags as defensive coordinator. They're going to have to get talented young players on defense to continuously get them closer to a top 10 defense. If you have a top 10 defense, you're going to see this team continuously find their way back into the AFC Championship game. Whew. Lots of questions. Loving it. Loving it. Thank you, Avery. I love you being in here. Like, nice seeing you. I don't see wide receiver being a primary need. However, if a Traylon Burks, Doxson, or Williams are there at 30, it's going to be hard to pass one of them out. I don't disagree with that, especially with the offensive nature of Brett Veach and Andy Reid. It's going to be hard to say no to those guys. And it wouldn't surprise me to see a Jameson Williams end up being a Kansas City Chief if he's there at 29. So 29 or 30, whichever one it is. Yeah, it's definitely intriguing. I think they just have to understand, much like they have to understand in a football game, adjusting your board. Sometimes you have to pass on a talented wide receiver when you have needs elsewhere at corner, defensive end, probably maybe safety. So yeah, I don't disagree with that. Thank you, Red Royce. I have to say, at the first of the year, I would have told you were fine without Sammy, but I kind of wish we had him. I know being able to play and money, but I mean, I don't think Sammy Watkins did anything for this team in the postseason that Byron Pringle didn't do personally. And he's been getting nothing but older, more injured, and more expensive than a guy like Pringle. So, yeah, and I was a guy who loved Sammy Watkins. I loved what he did, but you have to understand too that he wanted to be a bigger part of an offense. And I think that we kind of heard him talk about he was being used to set up other players. Now the Chiefs understand they kind of need to use Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce to set up Byron Pringle and McCall Hardman to an extent. So it's all about learning process. I think losing Sammy Watkins allowed them to discover more potency in their offense. So give and take. Thank you, Tyler, for your question. We are set at linebacker with Bolton and Gay, or should we get a third complimentary piece? Yeah. I think Hitchens will be gone. I agree with that. You need to add more speed and athleticism at linebacker because they don't have, especially if you're going to talk about Hitchens being gone and Neiman being gone, and then you have Sorensen, who's also probably going to be gone, who played dime backer a lot. You need more linebackers, period. You need a lot of them. You just free agents, draft, they're going to have a lot of them, a lot of them, a lot of them. Thank you for the super chat, Carlos. What happened with Josh Gordon? They signed him and it seemed like he didn't touch the field the last 2 games. He was inactive for all the postseason, and then they put him on waivers not too long ago, and he cleared. He was back on the practice squad. He didn't, I don't think he knew enough of the playbook, and I think that he just wasn't in game shape enough, kept dropping balls, and didn't show that he should be on the field. That's my opinion. Thank you for the super chat, Maz. Do you think Jameson Williams will drop to 30 because in mock drafts I see him going 13 to 30? He could be anywhere. It's an interesting because he's injured, I believe. If I'm wrong about that, someone tell me. But I'm pretty sure he got hurt in the national championship, so he could go anywhere in the first round. It's going to be he did. He was one that tore his ACL, I think. So he could fall to 30, but I don't really know where he's going to end up going. He definitely injury concerns. You're not going to see him participate in the combine or anything like that. So he could definitely fall to the end of the first round in the second round, and it's just going to have to be adjusting your board as it goes. And Williams would be fun to have on this team, but again, I think that there are other needs besides wide receiver. Thank you for the super chat, and thank you, Mike, for your super chat as well. Completely hypothetical. You replace Neiman with Chad Numa or Leo Chanel. Do they stop Burrow in the 3rd and 10 scramble? Oh, and Peter to replace Sorensen would love it. Jabril would work as well, and would Juju be a fit? I think Juju would fit. I think Jabril Peppers being a Sorensen replacement is a great idea, personally. But, excuse me, the scramble, I don't think it stops. I don't think they stop Burrow. I think that he just, Nate Tice says this a lot. You need a quarterback who can get you a bucket. And Joe Burrow was going to do that on that play. He was going to go get them that first down, and he did get them that first down. I think that the only thing they needed to do was be better tacklers on the defensive tackle, get those sacks. If they do that, then you're going to find them winning that game, in that situation. But as much as you want to talk about the missed tackles, the offense was the clear irresponsible party in this game, and I don't think there's much question about it. Thank you very much, you guys. You're awesome. So many questions. I'm starting to catch up a little bit here. Thank you, William, for your super chat. I am a Red Sox fan too, and this loss hurt as bad as the 2003 ALCS Game 7. That team bounced back to win on 0-4. Chances Kansas City does the same. They're always going to be in contention with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, and as good as the defense could possibly be, we saw them get to this point with a defense that probably played above their talent level down the end of the season. You bring in some pass rush juice, some real pass rush juice at defensive end. It's not Frank Clark. You figure out how to get more athletes at corner. I think we're talking about a team that can continuously, especially if they start running the ball more and force teams to play action game. We're talking about a team that's going to consistently always be there. So they can win it next year. I need to see the roster construction next year. Who's going to be everywhere? A lot of stuff can happen between now and next year. I think they have 36 guys under contract next year or something like that. So they got some work to do. All right, guys, thank you so much for all the questions. I'm going to try to wrap some of these up here. We got about 10 minutes left in the stream, and I'm going to go as fast as I can here. Thank you, Canadian. Why would they not have tried to run the ball near the end of the game? Bengals on a timeout. Says it suggests Andy Reid didn't have confidence in his defense. They would have needed a touchdown. Yeah, that's an interesting concept as well. It seems like they just stopped doing what was working and getting themselves out of a comfort zone. And I would have liked to see them at least run the ball one more time before that. But even then, I'm not entirely sure why Jarek was in there on their first down run. when he's really not as good as a goal line back as either Daryl or Clyde is. I think that they should have had Clyde in there first, and he would have, in my opinion, he would have probably gotten closer to the goal line. Then you have more options to run the ball or not. It's a weird thing that they did, and not seeing them run the ball a little bit more in that situation, at least one more time, is a mistake, in my opinion. Thank you, Dan. Oh, will Jody Fortson be ready for training camp? I believe so, but we don't have much update on his situation. Oh, Holly, thank you so much for the generous super chat. You always just find ways to make Ryan and myself speechless, and we appreciate you so very much. I was in the first row behind Chiefs sideline, so noted the players' attitudes and body language. Second half seemed like the O was downtrodden and defeated. Everyone on D was smiling and relaxed except for Gabe Bolton and Ingram. How do you? All right, let's see if I can get the rest of the question here. How do you coach a fighting attitude? You know, personally, I have no experience coaching, but you can't always coach the attitude. That's, in my opinion, that's why they brought a Frank Clark, a Tyrann Mathieu, and you have a Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce there. Those guys are supposed to be the ones that the team feeds off of in those situations, that they look to for that emotional connection and for all of that attitude. And that's why I want to see Patrick be more in people's faces at times when they're dropping a ball, when they're in the wrong spot, when things aren't working, even to himself. You have to point out on the sideline, on the field, some of these situations, who's in the wrong. And I would like to see that side a little bit more out of Patrick, because as much as it might look like the wrong thing, I think in those moments you have that to fall back on, and it gets getting in people's face can light that fire. And I just feel like you said, that offense didn't really have any of that in the second half. No one was like getting upset and getting anything like that, which is not a great thing in a game in the AFC Championship. So I'm not sure what they could have done or what they need to do going forward to light that fire, but something has to happen, and it's going to happen pretty quick. Otherwise, that's going to happen more and more and more, even with a quarterback like Mahomes. Thank you very much for the super chat. Always, always so much support from you, and we appreciate it so much, so much. All right, let's get through some of these quickly here. You guys are awesome, by the way. 306 of you in here on a Monday where after we lose. Whew, whew. Thank you, Howard, for the super chat. Our biggest need is defensive end, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. Corner is going to be an interesting situation. After we've seen Baker, to me, it doesn't look like Baker is going to be it. He doesn't seem to have much. The team doesn't have much trust in him. They also are going to need safety if Matthew doesn't come back. He is looking to be safety is looking to be more and more of a very important need. And I think you have a couple interesting options at defensive end. Malik Herring out of Georgia, who had his ACL tear last year, that they brought in as a UDFA. You still have Josh Kane. So as much as I think that defensive end, you need a starter there, you have some options that could come up and play some interesting positional situations for you. So that might push defensive end down a little bit more than a safety, especially if Matthew's not there. All right. Yeah, I'm hoping we don't bring back Dirty Dan either. Don't need him here. Thank you again, Tom, for your support. The super chat. I was at the Bills game all overtime. I said, don't get cute. We didn't, and we won. Same rule applied yesterday. 5 to 10 yard plays were there all game long. I don't think they necessarily got cute enough either in the red zone. Like, you see Andy Reid do some of these trick plays in the red zone, and they didn't break that out near the end against the Bengals, which was another key for me, that everything kind of got tight. And even the coaching got tight, which is very, very weird. So yeah, they could have done a lot of stuff in this game better. And I think that offensively, 5 to 10 yards of running the ball a lot and throwing just like quick outs and some quick screens and wide receiver screens, things like that, would have been enough to get them going in the right direction. I see my dad's in here, or at least he was in here. I'll make sure to give him a welcome. He is named Papa Bear in there. Thank you for the question, Mez. Chiefs need to develop a killer instinct, which Andy Reid won't do because he wants to be respectful of the team, which comes back to bite him. And yeah, well, You're not necessarily wrong about that. I think that's where Patrick needs to take over. And I'm hoping that Patrick understands that on the field, he and Travis Kelsey sometimes need to have that mentality and go for the throat. And even if Andy Reid doesn't like it. So, yeah, I don't disagree with you there. Whew, we got lots of talking in here. Thank you, Jay. Sammy averaged 90 yards per game in 2019 postseason. Pringle not replicating that production. He's scoring more touchdowns, so you don't have to replicate the yards. He's scoring more touchdowns. He scored 4 touchdowns in their first 2 playoff games. There's 3 touchdowns in the first 2 playoff games this year, which were his first 2 touchdowns. I think touchdowns are better than yards, especially when your offense was doing everything it needed to do. And he still didn't get targeted a whole lot. Like Sammy got targeted more in those postseasons than Byron Pringle did in this past postseason. I might be wrong about that, but I'll look that up later to fact check it. But again, I think touchdowns are more important than yardage if you're getting yardage from a multiple different wide receivers as that wide receiver 3 spot. The touchdowns end up being a bit more important. That's just my opinion. Wow. All right. Thank you, Craig, for the question. How about bringing in Tom Osborne and Barry Switzer to consult on running game? See, the thing for me is that Andy Reid has a great run game. They do. They have everything schematically panned out to work well. And we've seen them run that last week against the Bills, that Y insert, that they got 20 yards a pop twice doing it. They have the scheme for the run game. It's got to be a commitment to it. So at the end of the day, this is up to Andy Reid to say, when we're in a situation like that, we're getting 5, 6, 7 yards every time we run the ball. And the only time we got like one unsuccessful run was a fullback dive. You have to run the ball. It's got to be a commitment to it. They just didn't do that. Thank you for the question, Harper. Where would target a wide receiver in the draft? What prospects do you like the Chiefs to draft? If they go first round, I think Drake London, depending on how teams feel about him, he could be there around the 30 mark. Jameson Williams might be down there too. I think those guys are interesting prospects down at the bottom of the first round. The second round, you're probably going to have Romeo Doubs out of Nevada, I think, is someone who's been creeping up draft boards. He's in there. I haven't done a whole lot of research on the wide receiver group yet. I'm just now getting into everything. But I think that we're looking probably at a day 2 wide receiver. And if needs push up like safety and defensive end and corner, you might end up seeing them take a 4th round pick, maybe try and move up a little bit more on day 3 to get somebody if they don't go for a wide receiver in free agency. Thank you, Aaron, for this. If you are a member and interested in talking to us in Discord, the Discord is awesome, by the way. There's a ton of great conversation that goes on every single day. Send your email to Ryan's email at rgrpodcast@gmail.com to make sure you get in there for the awesome Discord that Stevie and everyone there has set up. They do a great job hosting that, and it really is a lot of great conversation. All right, I'm going to round up here with the last few questions. Steven, thank you. If the buck stops to Andy, at what point will Clark intervene if we continue to lose the way we did yesterday? He won't. I don't think he will, because Andy is that powerful. As much as he's the owner of the team, and Brett Veach is the GM, we all understand that Andy Reid pretty much does what he wants, says what he wants to, and all that stuff. And at the end of the day, I think it begins and starts and ends with Andy Reid. Thank you for the super chat, Mike. I'm still on that Jermaine Johnson train. If he's there at 29, he's going to show out at Super Bowl. I hope you're right. I'd love to see him show out in the Super Bowl. He's going to help improve his draft stock, and that would be definitely an option there at 29 to 30. Definitely. I agree with you. Thank you very much, Chief, Canadian Chief, for your support. Always in here. I love seeing everybody in here. All right, we're going to answer the last few questions here, and then we're going to get you guys out of here for your Monday night. Thank you, Red. I was like Andy as a player. I would like Andy to have a player or two to show us, and we will get this game, and it never happened. Hello, Papa Bear. Whew. Okay, that's okay. I was sorry. I completely misread that. I honestly, I thought he would have a player or two as well, especially down in the red zone. I thought they were going to bring out a little bit more creativity. I didn't see much creativity. Like we saw a lot of those reverses earlier in the season with Tyreek Hill, where you have the offensive line and everybody go one way and he comes back the other way. I don't I don't understand why they didn't use more of that. And even McCole Hardman on his jet sweeps, he was getting constant yardage. They just didn't do enough of it. It just doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't sit well with me that they just didn't really do a good job in that. And that, we know that falls on Andy. So difficult, difficult, difficult. Thank you, Rifleman. If Fortson is back, if Fortson is going to be back, then we make drafting or finding a new wide receiver less important. It looked like he was getting better. Yeah, I think that any amount of wide receiver or pass catching help definitely lessens the draft need for it. If you bring in a Juju Smith-Schuster as a free agent to be your slot receiver, which I think is a really good idea if he wants to, like I said, stop the TikTok stuff and keep his mind on football, and you get Jody Fortson back, and you have Noah Gray, who I think is going to be a good complementary tight end. Yes, it lessens the load, especially if you bring back Byron Pringle. It lessens the need to draft one other wide receiver. But I still think on day 3 and end of day 2, you could see them draft one just to get more pass catching talent in there, and I have no issues with that. All right, I'm going to answer one more question here, and then I'm going to get y'all out of here because I think we all deserve it on this Monday. Thank you, Brian. Why during overtime Pat was targeting Robinson on both first and second downs? That's a that's a question. I'm not entirely sure. I think maybe it more has to do with the fact that the Bengals thought the ball was going elsewhere. But you have to be able to understand that situation and to not run the ball on first down when you have 15, a whole brand new quarter, essentially. Okay? You have a whole brand new quarter. You can run the ball. You were already running the ball, and they came out and threw it all 3 times. It's inexcusable. It's inexcusable. There's no way, rhyme, or reason why that should have happened. So I wish I could answer that real question for you, but I'm sorry. That's all I got. And thank you. One last super chat. Tom sneaking it in there before I try to get out. A while back, I sent Andy a red run the ball hat. Maybe he needs to drag it out of his closet and make up his thinking cap. Great job, Dan. Thank you. I appreciate that. I know that this wasn't the best thing ever. I'm still working on doing things solo, so I appreciate y'all being here and supporting everybody at RGR. Aaron, Brian, Gooch, Stevie, who's all in here. I know Gooch will be probably in this week for y'all. But again, everyone here, thank you guys so much for the support. And I'm hoping that he gets that hat from you, Tom. I'm hoping he sees it and he keeps it in his background and he just thinks about it every day from now until next season. And then they come out and they run the ball a ton. They create this offense that really can't be stopped because Patrick Mahomes has figured out the short and the long and everything else. And if you can run the ball, teams can't drop 8. They just can't do it. You commit to it, good things will happen. So I hope that they do that he finds that hat for you. All right, guys. Appreciate you all. Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate that. Just so much support, love everywhere here. Everybody here at RGR, we all appreciate the support you guys give us. 306 on a Monday after that gut-wrenching loss. So much appreciation for what you guys do that allow Ryan and I to do what we do. Thank you all for the super chatters to support all the questions, you guys. You did a great job helping me through my very first solo Q&A. So I had a lot of fun. And this is RGR Football. Again, you guys make sure you're hitting that like, the sub, and the bell notification so you can get all the content that comes out every single week here. We're still going to figure out the day process here. You're going to have something on Wednesday. I'm not sure if it's going to be a draft film or if it's going to be the film from the AFC Championship game. I'm not entirely sure if I want to relive that quite yet. But again, one more time, thank you guys so much for all the support, the questions, everything. Everybody, please have a great night. Trying to forget what happened. Take some time to come down off of it. If you have to rewatch it to get it out of your system, please do so. And everybody have a great night and a great rest of your week. Lots of draft coverage coming. Lots and lots of draft coverage. Just be looking forward to that.